here with Professor John Danaher after another pro session here at Roca. Professor, thank you for joining us today. How are you feeling? First question, how are you feeling?
Pretty much the same as always. I have an upcoming hip replacement. I had my first hip replacement about 7 years ago, and now my other hip is starting to go. So I'll be getting a hip replacement in a couple of weeks.
That's unfortunate to hear. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope everything goes well, of course. Recently, maybe not so recently, but last few months, I saw a post that you made where you talked about potentially having to step away from your coaching, some coaching duties. Can you tell me more about that?
After the hip replacement, I also have to do a knee replacement. That would mean that I have 3 implants in my body, which is usually, they recommend you don't really do hard physical work after that. You can get away with 1 or 2 hip replacements. Hip replacements are pretty robust, but the combination of a hip and knee replacement on the same femur is a little questionable, they think. So I don't want to sound pessimistic, but they were like, no, you're not going to be able to do jiu-jitsu after this. So, but they said that with the first hip replacement, so I was able to come back. So we'll see.
Well, we certainly hope that you can continue to contribute and be a part of the community, seeing so much positive that you're a part of. If you don't mind me zagging a little bit now, that we have an update on that. I also saw something recently about a CJI team, right?
Yes.
And that you guys are in CJI. Can you confirm that yourself, that you guys are entering a team into the CJI 2 event?
Yes. Craig reached out and asked if we'd be interested. And I replied that we would. So we started talking about how that would work, how it would flesh out. They have a very interesting format. It's going to be quite different this year from the last one. The last one was very successful, but it was also a very different situation for them when they were running it. And this time it'll be a team event, but not a team event in the way in which it's conventionally been done in the past. Most people are familiar with like the old quintet style. It is a variation on quintet, but I think Craig's done a very good job of modifying the rules and the structure of the event to remove some of the rather obvious weaknesses of the original quintet, which is a little bit kind of like a crapshoot as to how the matches would go and be ordered. And I think they've done a very good job. They put a lot of thought into it, and it should be a very exciting event. There's a whole bunch of teams. The interesting contrast will be that most of the teams are actual gyms. Like there's B Team, there's New Wave, there's Atos, Gracie Barra. Those are actual gyms. But there's also, as it were, conglomerate teams where you can have like an Australian team or a Brazilian team where they're not committed to one gym, but rather to a whole nation. Like in the case of Europe, it's actually many nations. So those teams should have a theoretical advantage because they're not just drawing from one gym, they're drawing from the best of the best from multiple gyms, even across different countries in some cases. So that should add an interesting element to the teams. There's also a very interesting part which the CJI people came up with, the idea of a draft. Each team is allowed a draft, and you can have a team and then bring in someone from outside who comes in, and that should add kind of like a wild card factor to it, which should be very interesting.
Have you thought about how you will go about selecting the 5 participants and filling these spots?
Some of them are just pretty obvious because they're forced upon us. Like Gordon is very sick at this point, so I don't believe he'll be competing again. Nicholas is very badly injured, and he had his first shoulder surgery was not as successful as people were hoping for, so he had to do a second shoulder surgery, so he definitely won't be ready in time. So those 2 are simply just not there. So that kind of makes some of the decisions easier. We only really have one remaining heavyweight, that's Big Dan, so that's an obvious choice. Luke is our only 99 kilo fighter at this point, so Luke Griffith would be an obvious choice. John Carlo, of course, would be a prime choice at middleweight. I believe Dorian Oliveras would be an amazing addition at 66 kilos. I think his particular style of jiu-jitsu is extremely well suited to the CJI event. He'd be a natural pick. And that leaves 70 kilos, which is, that would be the most difficult one because you have Oliver Taza, you have Davis Asari, You have Isaac Michael and Jason Nolf, and also possibly a draft
Wild card,
pick,
yeah.
the wild card draft. So that I guess I'm speculating here, but I guess we'd have to have an internal trial in the gym, and because all of them want to go. So for 70 kilos, it's not an obvious choice. It's like all the other categories were obvious, and then 77 kilos is like, wow, who's going to go for that? So we'd probably have to do some kind of internal trial and see who qualifies.
That's incredible, and to be able to kind of lock in, it sounds like 4 of these selections this early on, must be a boon to you as a coach to just kind of be able to focus on
Yeah,
these
yeah,
things, right?
no, it should be a fun event. It's they've carved out a very interesting position in the realm of big league competitions. Most of the competitions that the athletes enter are single events. One athlete goes in, takes on another athlete, and you see the result. They've gone with the team motif, which is always an exciting way to compete, and they're quite different from all the other big shows out there. So it should be really interesting.
Wonderful. I would like to turn our attention now to Who's Number One, coming up
Yes.
in about 10 days.
Yeah.
Enormous event going down in Round Rock, Texas. You have quite a few fighters on the card. I'd like to start by talking about Luke Griffith, who you already mentioned, taking on Victor Hugo. What are your thoughts on Luke entering this match, his first action since ADCC? What are you thinking about for this match? How do you consider this match?
It's a really exciting match. Luke, over the last couple of years, I think has shown people that on his best day, he can beat anyone in the world. He's proven that with even people as great as Kenan Duarte, who he decisively defeated. But probably the one thing which most people would criticize Luke on is consistency. He will come out and beat someone who's top ranked, but then he'll lose a match in a surprising fashion sometime after that. So he's shown the potential to beat the best of the best, but he hasn't yet found that internal consistency to go from very high level to absolute top level. So that's something that Luke will have to mature into as he goes further into his competitive career. The opponent he has, I think, is absolutely, without any question, at the top of his game. I think no one would disagree with me if I said that Victor Hugo is on top of the heavyweight world at this point in jiu-jitsu. He had a remarkable win against Nicky Rod recently. He had, I believe at this point, he might actually be like 4-0 against Nicky Rod, but this was the most decisive one because it was a submission finish. And against one of the guys who's most difficult in the world of jiu-jitsu, just to beat him is difficult, and to submit him is extraordinarily difficult. And yet he was able to do it. So I think everyone would agree that right now in the heavyweight world, Victor Hugo is absolutely at the top of the ladder. So this is a huge test for Luke, and he's proven very successful against other great heavyweights like Kenan Duarte. In the ADCC, he was very successful for 80% of the match against Felipe Pena and looked great. He appeared to be dominating the action, but then had a mental lapse during the match. And if he can just build up to that kind of consistency where he stays at that top level where he's already proven he can beat the best of the best, but do that every time throughout the entirety of even a long and tough match, that will be what he needs to get to that top level.
It looks like Luke has been losing weight. He has been losing weight leading into this match, but also beyond this match, right? Was that advice from you, or was that something that he decided on his own?
That was something that Luke decided on his own, and it's we've always had discussions about what is the role of weight. There's a sense in which weight is an advantage in jiu-jitsu. There's a reason why there's weight divisions, but everything in jiu-jitsu comes at a price, and when you put on size and strength, it always comes at the cost of endurance to some degree. And you always have to ask yourself, what's more important? Is it strength or is it endurance? I personally, I think of the two, in most cases, endurance is more important. And best of all is the combination of the two, where you have not just endurance but strength endurance. And developing that is it's tough. You know, especially when you have a very, very large opponent. Victor Hugo normally weighs around 265 to 270 pounds. So he's not just a heavyweight, he's a big heavyweight. And you can attack that in two ways. You can say, okay, I'm going to try and get as big as him, or I'm going to emphasize something completely different and emphasize speed and endurance. And Luke went with the speed and endurance option.
Wonderful. Moving on to the next match involving one of your athletes, it will be Helena Cravar in her first WNO title opportunity, taking on Liz Clay, who she lost to in 2015, or no, sorry, when she was 15, 3 years ago, right?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that matchup, and what does it feel like getting a chance to see Helena go against someone who defeated her 3 years ago now?
Oh, it's a great opportunity for Helena. This is, you know, I always love rematches, especially one where there's a period of time between them, because they give a great opportunity to assess, you know, how well is an athletic program working. That, probably the clearest sign you get of progress in an athletic program is rematches over extended periods of time. Obviously, Helena was much younger. She was a 15-year-old girl when she fought her the first time, and it was a pretty competitive match. She's progressed a lot since then, but so has Elizabeth Clay. And Elizabeth Clay has had some amazing victories in that 3 years. I believe, for example, she's submitted Fionn Davis by leg lock, which is an amazing accomplishment. So she is absolutely someone who can beat the best of the best. So this will be, again, a big, big test for Helena. There's a sense in which these are two of the younger developing athletes, both Luke and Helena, and these are big developmental tests for both of them. And they're coming up against people who are established champions, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Do you feel like that's kind of emblematic of where the team is right now, developing, getting close to that higher level, but now having to test themselves against the established forces?
It's coming at an interesting time, because, you know, Gordon's been such a dominant force in jiu-jitsu for so long, and now he's stepping away from the competitive arena and switching to coaching, and so now the youngsters have to push their way up, and there's always that kind of like athletic coming of age where you have to prove yourself against the best, and both of them have gone to extraordinary heights. Both got silver medals in ADCC at a very young age, and their whole careers are ahead of them. So I'm very confident that in time they will rise to the top. The only question is, how long will it take, and who will be the people that propel them to the top? You know, who are the people they have to get past to get to the top level of competition?
Helena and Liz, taken by skill, victories on the mat, success in competition, may be the best two women's leg lockers to ever have a match like this. Do you think we're going to see some kind of leg lock shootout? Do you think they're going to shy away, knowing how good the other person is?
It's a good question. Whenever you have people who are both very good at something, but the skill that they are strongest in clashes directly. They're both good at arm locks, both good at leg locks, both good at strangleholds. You often get a match in which the thing that they're best at doesn't figure at all, because they just negate each other, and the match gets determined, the outcome of the match is determined by something completely unexpected. But I think it would be unfair to both athletes to say they're both just leg lockers. They're both very good in every aspect of the game. Elizabeth Clay has excellent upper body submissions as well, so does Helena. They're both very strong positionally. They're versatile athletes. If there is, early in the match, a sense that neither one of them is really going to be able to get each other on the legs, it's just too evenly matched, they both have games that they can adjust to. And so I think that won't be an issue.
I know for so long you had so many champions, but you were still looking for that female champion for you to develop and bring along. It seems pretty clear Helena is that person.
She's got as much potential as anyone I've ever seen in the sport. She's an amazing athlete, and very, very serious, and well supported by her parents, who do an amazing job getting her ready for competition. And I think it's fair to say, if there was ever someone who you look at and you think, man, they're on the right path, then that would be Helena Cravar.
Actually, I'd like to ask this question. It just occurs to me now. You work with so many very talented teenagers, right? I look at the team, and there's a lot of 16, 17, 18-year-old up-and-coming grapplers. Do you notice any similarities between how their families and parents deal with them or support them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. There are some massive differences in the way parents interact with their developing children. I never try to influence that. I think every family has its own dynamic, and they've been working together as a family a lot longer than they've been working with me. So they know each other very well. They know what works and what doesn't. So I never even interfere with that. I'm a jiu-jitsu coach, not a family counselor. So when they come in, it's just technique, tactics, strategy, and that's where the conversation ends. But with regards to your question, are there commonalities? Yes, there are some commonalities. The main thing is that the teenage athlete feels like there's a strong structure of support behind them that works in terms of their motivation, their ability to get to a gym, and is sustainable over time. But there's a lot of variation within that. So as I said, I don't think there's any one method which is the right way of doing things. I've seen many different approaches, some of them pretty extreme and some of them less so, and they all seem to work.
That's great news. Let's get back to the card. I would like to ask you about a couple of your athletes that we have on the undercard before we get out of here. I'd like to start with Sebastian Attard. Something very interesting with Sebastian is that this is his first week at Roca. I'd like to ask, one, what goes into deciding to invite someone to these kind of training sessions? And two, when the typical athlete shows up for their first week at Roca, what do you think that's like? What do you see and observe from that athlete usually?
Those are good questions.
Thank you.
When someone first comes in, I think, there's this kind of expectations like, oh man, I've got to perform now. This is like, I'm in with this, it's like kind of like getting into an exclusive nightclub. You put on your best clothes and you try to act in a certain way.
Get your best days.
100%. But really, it's not that different. We have a way of teaching people. He's already very familiar with that because he's trained with me for quite a long time at Renzo Gracie, which is just a different location but same training style. So the main difference is the training partners, and unfortunately his first training partner on day one was Luke Griffith for the entire workout. So that's a big step up from training with the guys at the local gym to now you're training with Luke Griffith, and Luke is obviously a weight division heavier, so I'm sure physically that was a tough first day. But Sebastian's a great guy, and he comes all the way from Australia. He pays for himself. He saves up money in Australia and comes here and trains. So I admire these guys so much. They put so much effort and time and dedication. Imagine traveling across the Pacific Ocean to come and do a competition and all on your own dime. And so I'm just happy that these guys have this level of dedication and enthusiasm for the sport, and they're willing to put so much into it. So of course it was fun to have them here at Roca.
Wonderful. I'd like to ask about Trinity Pun, who is going to be on this card. She's somebody who has been just kind of waiting to break out for a little while. I feel like, picking up some good performances, developing here under your tutelage for a little bit now. Can you tell people who might not be familiar with Trinity what's she like? What's her fighting style like?
Yeah, Trinity actually has trained in not only here, but also with us in New York City back in the old basement.
Wow, no kidding.
She was very, very young back then.
She's like 16 or something now.
I think she was like a child athlete, basically, but she did the adult class and she would train alongside us. Her dad would drive her into New York City every day, and she would come in, but because of school responsibilities and also just the pressure on the parents, they couldn't come in for extended periods of time. So she would come in, train for a week here and there, and then she ended up moving down to Texas when she got older. And she's been training here for a while now. She's always been a very talented athlete. She's got a great submissions game, very good leg locks, excellent strangleholds, good back control. She's very long for the weight division, so she has that kind of long person's game of being able to lock full body triangles and play well with the legs. She's got a very tough physical opponent who's kind of like a hybrid wrestler, jiu-jitsu player. Those are always tough athletes to come up against. And Trinity's more like a pure submissions kind of a game, which is well suited to the WNO rule set. But Trinity's a very, very talented athlete. As you said something interesting before, she's always been there, always kind of flew just a little bit under the radar. She's beaten some big names in jiu-jitsu, but didn't get as much notice as perhaps she should have been. So this is a big chance for her to make a statement and come out and put on a strong performance and get some eyes on her.
Wonderful. John, we always appreciate your time so much. Thank you so much for
No
all of this,
problem.
for all the coaching you put in. We can't wait to see all your athletes at WNO 27 on April 18th.
Great. Thank you so much.